I'm sure we've all felt this familiar struggle, staring at a blank page or an unfinished project, overwhelmed by the task ahead. This used to happen to me a lot when I was starting a web design project. Achieving a flow state can seem elusive, but on paper, getting into a flow state isn't that difficult. The hard part comes from the sometimes tremendous resistance we feel before we start a task we need to work on. Over time and some trial and error, I have figured out 5 steps that work for me to consistently achieve a flow state. And I'll be honest, none of these 5 steps are groundbreaking. In fact, some of it is surprisingly simple. But the beauty of its effectiveness is also because of its simplicity. And there's arguably one thing that is way more important than any of the steps that I'm going to talk about, which I'll discuss at the end. So, let's dive into the 5 steps. Number 1, write down weekly and daily goals. At the start of each week, I write down weekly goals on my refrigerator weekly planner magnet. And at the beginning of each day, I write out daily goals that I want to accomplish for that day. I used to poo-poo goal setting, but when I compare my work output without goal setting to my work output with goal setting, there's just no question. Goal setting just helps me to accomplish so much more. And this is, I think, because when I have goals, I now have something tangible that I'm working towards, and I don't want to let myself down. And it also gives me focus on what I need to work on, because I can't get into a flow state if I don't know what I'm working towards. So definitely start setting goals if you aren't doing so already. Number 2, get a pick-me-up. I told you, some of this is stupid simple, but let's be real. I don't work well when I'm tired. So having a pick-me-up like coffee, tea, or an energy drink can be just the fuel that I need to get into that flow state. Now look, I know energy drinks aren't very healthy, so I've actually been using Magic Mind, which is a mental performance shot to not only help boost my energy, but also my focus. Magic Mind sent me a 15-day supply to try, and I'm about 10 days in, and I really like the feeling that I get from it. It helps me to feel energized and focused, and the best part that I've noticed is there's no crash, which is the problem that I had with energy drinks. So I highly recommend it, and if you go to the link in the description below, you can use the code JANSLEY20 and you can save up to 48% off your first subscription for the next 10 days. So thank you to Magic Mind for sponsoring this video. Number 3, have a dedicated start time. Again, this is probably the easiest thing to do on the list. Pick a time that you can regularly dedicate to doing work. I have found that when I say I'll work on a project sometime today, that time never comes. It keeps getting pushed back until the next day, and that vicious cycle just keeps repeating. However, if I set a specific time to start work, I am much more likely to commit to it. And this is because when I set aside a specific time to work on a project, if I piss off and procrastinate, I'm going to feel really guilty and bad about myself because that time was specifically blocked off for deep work. Now, the cool thing is it doesn't need to be a large chunk of time that you block off. Shorter, more frequent blocks of time, like say 20 to 30 minutes every day, are way more effective than spending 2 hours but only once a week. And that's simply because it's far easier to focus for 30 minutes than it is for 2 hours. Number 4, turn on some deep house music. This one's kind of personal to me, but I cannot work without instrumental deep house music. Having music helps me to focus so much more than just being in a silent room. And because house music is often more up-tempo, it often keeps me more alert as well. So some playlists I listen to from Spotify are Ibiza Lounge, House Focus, and Workday Lounge. So highly recommend if you're looking for some deep work playlists. Number 5, toss that phone away from you. This one is super important because phones are the #1 way that kill my flow state. So I used to think that having my phone on Do Not Disturb was enough to keep it from distracting me. Wrong! I would still check it every so often, even if a web page was loading or a video file was rendering. So now I just chuck my phone onto a couch out of reach so that it cannot distract me. So this operates on a very simple principle. If something distracting is within reach, it's obviously going to distract me and I will use it. However, if it takes physical work to get to my phone, then I'm way less likely to check it. So chuck your phone somewhere and it will vastly improve your ability to get into a flow state. Now, while all these steps have allowed me to consistently get into a flow state, there's one thing that is even more important than any of these steps, and that is having something meaningful to work on. If you work on something that you're actually interested in, then following these steps will be far easier than something you have little to no interest in. For instance, I'm working on developing my skills as a web designer, and because I have an interest in it, I can much more easily follow the steps and get into a flow state than if I were working on something that I just felt like I had to do. I think a lot of people try to learn skills because of what it can do for them and not because they intrinsically enjoy it. And because of that, they have a very difficult time achieving a flow state and are more likely to just give up on whatever project that they're working on. And that's why, like, whatever you decide to work on or embark on, make sure it's something that you're interested in, because that will be arguably your greatest fuel for achieving a flow state. If you liked the video, be sure to subscribe, and until next time, I will see you in the next video. Take care.